President Trump and others call it the China virus because it started and spread from China. Some folks don't like that name, but the reality is if China had been transparent early on, it may not actually have become a pandemic.
And joining us is a China expert and a man who is predicting the collapse of the Chinese government, Gordan Chang. Gordan, thank you for being here with us.
Gordan, there's so much to cover, but let me just start with this. Early on, China clearly was not straight up with the United States and the rest of the world as far as where this thing originated from, the extent and the breadth and depth of it. Now they're telling us that everything is under control. There are no more cases. Cases are on the decline that existed. Why should we believe anything that they say?
We should not believe anything they say. Yes, that China's better than it was before, but there is still an epidemic there, and we've got to be concerned that if we were, for instance, to open our borders to arrivals from China, we'd see an additional wave of infections from that country.
You know, Gordan, there's critics like you who would say that the director of the World Health Organization is in the pockets of China. What evidence do you have to prove that that may be true?
Well, for instance, just a few hours ago, a senior WHO official said that the organization had, quote unquote, absolutely no evidence that China's numbers weren't absolutely perfect. So, you know, that's just ridiculous, especially when Dr. Tedros, the director general of the WHO, says that China's response showed the superiority of China's socialist system. That's not an appropriate comment from the WHO. We have seen the WHO do China's bidding from the very beginning, from delaying declaring this an emergency to delay declaring this a pandemic. We have seen WHO take China's position 100% throughout this. So that's the evidence.
Gordan, quick, in your latest piece, you argue for retaliatory steps to be taken against China. One of which you suggest is that the U.S. should remove some diplomats as a signal and maybe expel some from China that are here in the U.S. How does that not escalate things as opposed to maybe calm tensions?
Well, I don't know if we can calm tensions, because you got to remember that an official Chinese government foreign ministry spokesman essentially accused the U.S. of germ warfare. And this was part of a long-term campaign, Sean. You know, we'd like to think that if we talk to China, that it would actually help things. But we've been doing that for 4 decades, and China's just been getting worse. We have to do something to really dislocate China, as Arthur Waldron in that piece mentioned. And the way to do that is basically to say to them, look, we no longer care about you. We don't think you're that important. We're not going to just do everything you want us to do. And that might actually shock them into responsible behavior. But, you know, it's unfortunate, Sean, that we have to get to this position, but we're not driving this. Beijing is driving this, and we can't continue to do things that have failed over the course of many decades.
You know, Gordan, we saw, it was interesting, I think just a week or so ago, an official from China saying that this was actually caused from the U.S. And claiming that we brought it over to China. They have showed no evidence more than their causal statements. What would you say about those claims?
Well, I think it's very important that President Trump, Vice President Pence, and Secretary of State Pompeo continue what they've been doing. And that's calling this China virus, Wuhan virus, whatever, to make it clear that this did not come from the U.S. So it's unfortunate that we are forced into doing something like this. But clearly, Beijing is driving us in a direction we don't want to go. We've got to defend ourselves.
Gordan, let me leave you with this. There's folks on the right that say that mainstream media folks are, quote, using Chinese talking points. You just mentioned the WHO siding with China over and over again. Simply put, why doesn't the rest of the world see this, right? Why is it just folks on the right that are making these claims? If it's that obvious, why wouldn't more people be calling out an entity like the WHO and saying, I can see over and over again you taking China's point, we're not going to stand for it. Instead, they're holding up places like the WHO and saying this is the leader in this field, we should be following their example.
Well, I think a lot of people like Chinese money. A lot of people around the world are just anti-American. So, you know, you have a lot of reasons why people have adopted China's line. And of course, in this country, you know, we have a adversarial political system. We've got 2 parties. So, you know, we have a lot of criticism of the president. But we all got to remember, as Americans, we now have a common enemy. Our republic is at risk. And although, you know, people may not like President Trump, they may not vote for him in November, He's the only president we have at this moment, and he's the one who's defending us. So we got to save our country, and we've got to stand behind the president.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Gordan Chang, for sharing your opinion with us. And when we return, we're celebrating a special day. Find out what's being done for National Medal of Honor Day. We're going to meet a hero who earned that distinction next.